Welcome to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, brought to you by Pilma. This podcast helps lead lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Here is your legal marketing expert and host, Ken Hardison.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Ken Hardison, and welcome to another episode of Grow Your Law Firm. And this week, we have a treat for you. We have Chuck Kocher, who is my mentor and a brilliant coach, business coach, scaling up coach. And he was my mentor when I was getting certified to be a scaling up coach, and probably wouldn't have got through it without him. And we still work together on some things, and I think we have one common client now. So I wanted to pick his brain because he has been doing this for over 19 years. He's a certified business coach, certified scaling up coach. Certified John Maxwell leadership. His resume. I'm not going to take all day. Just trust me. Just trust me, folks. This guy is smart, and I've never asked him a question and he didn't come up with an answer. So Chuck, thank you for being here today, and I want to share some of your knowledge with our listeners and viewers today.
Hey Ken, it's great to be on with you. I'm really enjoying our relationship, and those are kind words. I'll have to put you in the PR department. Okay.
Just send me my check later. Okay.
There you go.
So I want to talk about, in scaling up, there's what is it? It's the 4 decisions. And can you go through those very briefly? I don't want to epistle, but very briefly what they are.
Yeah, it's a framework we use in scaling up, as you know, Ken, and it centers around people, strategy, execution, and cash, and they're ongoing areas that you have to work on as you develop a firm and grow your business. And it's not something you complete, get it done, move ahead. You're always working on people. You're always developing a strategy. You're always working on how you can execute better. And money, we're always working on putting more money in the till, if you will, so we can scale up and do the things we want to do. And so our framework as coaches in scaling up is to help people dive into those areas and get after them. And so they can scale their company up in a meaningful way. And when they hit those, Vern calls it death valleys, because you do. I mean, if you're growing a company, you're pushing the envelope, you're going to hit a wall on occasion. And we like to believe those areas that we address will help you get through it faster, smarter. And like with COVID, come out of it better than anybody else, or get through it and be extremely successful, if you will.
Yeah. And I want, we could, my gosh, I mean, I've heard you talk 3 hours just and not even on a presentation and not get through, maybe a third of it. Mm-hmm. So I want to pick out one thing today and really talk about it, because what I see when I was doing my consulting work over the years and in my masterminds, seems like the big deal. I mean, it's everything, but the biggest deal I saw was that lawyers, and I don't know if it's everybody, and you might see this everywhere, but they just have a problem getting things done. Or they'll go to my summits, and I'll have 300 or 400 lawyers out there, and I'll get them to raise their hands how many things they got that they want to implement. And there's over half of them got over 20 things. They've just got little golden nuggets, and then what happens is 95% of them get back and they get caught up in their day-to-day business, putting out fires, and they never get anything done. And so, or just the daily routine sometimes, not even new projects, but just getting things done, like getting cases out and getting cases in. Execution of it seems to be one of the biggest constraints. I'm not going to say it's the only, for sure, but why is there so much problem with businesses getting things executed? I mean, implementation, execution, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's one answer. I do know there's a syndrome of too much, right? In other words, say yes to everything. Every bright, shiny object or opportunity comes along, let's go do it, right? And so there's that extreme. And then the other extreme on execution that I see is not making decisions, not moving forward, or not coming up with a game plan to actually get something done. And so to me, it's a mirage of things, if you will, in every kind of business, because as you're talking, I'm thinking of trade companies, hospitals, healthcare, nonprofits. I could, we go through every industry in the world, and there's a challenge in there. And I think the key is to look at your organization and go, what are the main priorities? What are the main things we have to do, as opposed to a list of 100? And I have clients all over the globe that they finally got that through the leadership area of the company, and they finally said, we're going to do less and we'll get more done. With the concept is, let's not have 10 things to do and get maybe some of it done. Let's have up to 5 company priorities, company initiatives for the year, company priorities for the quarter, and individual things, if you will. Let's not go beyond 5 in any of those categories. And actually, the best companies I work with, Ken, that execute with the best in the world, best bottom lines, they actually have 2 or 3 individual priorities. They have maybe 3 or 4 priorities for the company or initiatives. So they don't try to do too much, but they pick the main things and do them extremely well. And that gives you scale. You end up getting focused and saying no more than you say yes. And that sounds contradictory to growth. But even Jim Collins says that it's the art of learning to say no that gave the great companies he identified around the world, that gave them the big time scale to be, good to great companies. And I see the same thing all the time.
Yeah. And that, I guess, I was thinking about scaling up, and I guess that's one reason, they really push the daily huddles, and everybody's got to have, what is your priority today? Yep. And I know with Pilma, I can tell you this from personal experience. Mm-hmm. We went down to quarterly goals, and we never do over three projects. Okay, I call them you call them whatever you want to, but the deal is, and we have a quarterly meeting, and we all agree on it, and we set it out. These are the tasks got to be done. And here's the people going to do them, and here's the deadlines, and then have weekly meetings with scorecards. And when you do all that, I mean, I can tell you that we get twice, if not 3 times more done than we did before. Yeah. And I'm one of these guys. They hate me at work because I'm an ideal guy. So I'm coming up with 20 or 30 things. So I'm the world's worst. I mean, yeah. I'm an ideal guy. So I'm an entrepreneur. So I'm always thinking about. So I just had to, restrain myself and say, what are the 3 most important things we need to get done this quarter to reach our 1-year goal, or 3-year goal, or 5-year goal, or a BHAG, or whatever. And that's what we work on. And it's killing me. I got 2 or 3 things I want to do, but I know we can't get to them I got an idea, but it's going to be first quarter next year because, I can't do but what I want to make sure we get this stuff done. That's more important, stuff that I know is working, that I can scale the business.
Yeah, exactly. And what are the numbers you're trying to achieve? What are the goals you have, financial targets, and maybe it's the number of cases. I was just talking to one of our mutual client about the number of cases they can produce. So you really have to think about, what are your financial objectives for the year, for the quarter, for the month, and then what are we going to do to make that happen, drive it. And then other things you have to accomplish to build the company to scale too. Because the worst thing to do is just grow. The next thing you know, the processes are breaking down, infrastructure, you don't have enough people. We all know that problem. When you're scaling, you're going to run into it. So having that priority, or those top initiatives or projects, whatever you call it, is uber critical, but it's got to be tied into what you're trying to actually do. Because I've had companies, they set targets, then they set their priorities, and they're not connected. I mean, that makes no sense. That's a good recipe for failure in execution. It's got to get connected. And that's why the beautiful thing we have is a 1-page strategic plan. It's all connected when you get it all completed, right from strategy down to execution, that we're talking about. And the other thing around execution I've seen, Ken, that's very important. So we're talking about knowing what the priorities are and making sure everybody knows what they are, right? It's one thing if you come up with them and nobody knows what's in your head, that's dangerous, right? But having those meetings, to your quarterly meetings and planning meetings, to do that, so everybody's on the same page, even if you disagree, at least you have a good debate to get there. And then making sure the company knows, and the organization and the firm. So it's something, it's not hidden in the closet somewhere, if you will. So that's big, because alignment on those, and less is more, like we said, is much more important. And then it becomes, what are you measuring? The data and the metrics. My goodness, we can get access to more data, and people have probably more data on us we'd like them to have, right? But it's out there, and you can overanalyze everything. in the old corporate world, paralysis, analysis by paralysis, that used to kill companies, big companies. They were moving like the Queen Mary, and you have to be a speedboat. So the question with data and metrics, which things must we track from an outcome perspective, but even more importantly, what's driving those outcomes? I see too many goals that are all outcome based, which is what you want to get to, but the companies don't put the metrics and the data, what's going to drive it? What's the thing you have to do to make it happen? So that's a big part of execution. And the third one is what you said earlier, the meeting rhythms, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual. And then eventually, you're working on strategic things in meetings. But those are all part of a great company that executes. Because if you have a daily huddle, for example, you and I are talking, we're in a firm together, and we're having a chat, and I bring up an issue in that daily huddle, a stuck or a challenge, I'm raising it quick. We have a form to bring it to you so we can get on the table right away, as opposed to 2 months later. Oh, I knew that was broken. I forgot to say something. That happens all the time. Communication breakdown. And so the huddles keep everybody focused on what's important, but even more importantly, raising issues or challenges. And you also get to see who in your team is engaged in the execution, right? Not just saying, I'm going to get to it next week, and next week he's going to get to it, or she's going to get to it the week after that. So I think that meeting rhythm, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, is extraordinary to execution. The other piece that, we talk about in the Rockefeller habits, which are, a big part of scaling up, is getting things visible. It seems like people are much more accountable when they can see who's doing what and where we are. No one likes to go to a meeting and go, well, it's the 12th week and I haven't really started my project yet. It needs to get done next week. Right. This is not college, study for an exam, or a final at the last minute. You have to be working on it the whole quarter. So if you have it visible, both, visually inside of the company, if you're a brick and mortar, or online with, tools, everybody's visible. There's no hiding, right, in execution. And then you can help somebody if they fall behind, as opposed to wait to the end of the quarter and go, oops, we're not going to get that done. So I see great companies doing that too.
So, when I talk to my mastermind lawyers, a lot of them say, well, it's counterintuitive. I mean, I have them say, I hate meetings because it seems like, it just wastes a lot of time. And I'm sitting here telling them, you need to be having daily huddles and weekly meetings and monthly meetings and quarterly planning meetings. But really, I mean, what would you say to our listeners out there that says, I just don't have time for all these meetings?
Well, the meetings that we're talking about are the ones to help leverage the scaling up model and drive, right? And they all have a purpose and agenda, right? So if you think of the huddle, what is that all about? It's syncing up the team. It's like playing a game, a football game. They have a huddle on every play, right? So you're syncing the team up every day on a daily basis. Everybody knows what's going on. Everybody knows what they have to do, and issues come up quick, right? So that's the purpose of a huddle. The weekly is more tactical, week to week, because you think about a quarter, it's 13 weeks. So you're checking in, quick review, update, adjusting for the next week ahead, part of the 13-week process. And then the monthlies are simply, there's 3 months in a quarter, check in, do some heavy lifting, some work and some thinking to keep the execution going. But you got 3 months. And then the quarterly is obviously, that intent is review, plan, and really dig into things as a collective group. They all have purposes. They all have agendas. They're all built to help you scale up. And I know every company that fights me on this, and they do, because the natural tendency is exactly what you said. We already have too many meetings. So my next question is, what else are you meeting on? What's more important, right? And again, you got to review a case. You got to have a meeting with different functions in your company. But I would suggest really looking at what else are you doing? Why are you doing it? What's the purpose? Who should be in the meeting? Really be in the meeting versus I'm going to come because I need to know, right, type of meeting. And really plan your other meetings with intent, cut them down, shorten them up. If they're done in a half an hour and they're an hour meeting, end the meeting. You know what most people do? Keep going on something else. What for? Yeah. Right? Or they get to the end of the meeting and everybody goes, so what were you getting together today for? There's no action plan. So my advice with meetings that goes beyond, what we're talking about here would get Death by Meeting by Pat Lencioni. And he gets into really having powerful and successful meetings. There's another website I'll suggest, lucidmeetings.com. And Elise Keith is a meeting expert. Every meeting you can imagine, how to run them more effectively, efficiently to grow your company. And she gets Scaling Up and mentions Vern's tools, inside of her website. So there's a couple power tools.
Yeah.
And again, to refute the ones that say too many meetings.
Our daily huddles at Pilma last 4 to 5 minutes. Our weekly meetings last about 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
And we cut them off an hour. And the thing I love about them is when you got agendas and you know what, and you just click, and everybody's got their work done. You got your data or whatever, your metrics and everything. And then at the end of it, this is something that I learned from Scaling Up is what have we agreed upon today?
Yes.
That kind of sums it up. I mean, that one little thing, what have we agreed? Because I've been to I used to go to meetings and I'd walk out. I said, what the hell did we just? I mean, I don't know what we agreed on. I don't know what we're going to do. And I think that just really gets some clarity in there. And I don't think most people do that at the end of their meetings.
No, here's a couple other tips too. So that what you just said is powerful. It's the who, what, when. So coming out of this meeting, what's the next step? What do we agree on? What's the next step? If it's another meeting or an action, who, what, when, who owns it? What exactly are we doing with this? And when are we going to get done by? So those three things alone are power tools. The other thing that I found is that stands out for me is meeting prep. In other words, what's the purpose of the meeting? And please come with your thoughts on this, or do this before you come, instead of doing it inside the meeting. And so somebody knows what they're getting into and why the meeting's there in the first place. The other thing is notes and either recording it on Zoom, which is the power of using Zoom, or have somebody who's a scribe catching those actions and key takeaways. So nobody's walking out. So I can't remember what we talked about. No. If somebody gives up an hour of their time, I don't know about your bill rate. I know we both have high bill rates. Oh my goodness. The cost of that meeting is ridiculous. We just spent $20,000 to say what, so to me, that's best practice. And again, that's why I referenced, the lucidmeetings.com site and Pat Lencioni, because I have all my clients go to this site, work on the book, because they always tell me, I already got too many meetings. I'm like, what are you doing in there? And then once we start digging in, Ken, we cut back on a lot of other stuff. And we run the Scaling Up meetings without fail, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to scale up in an effective, efficient manner. And they have meaning and intent.
Yeah, I just think they're really good about keeping everybody in line, everybody focused, the left hand knowing what the right hand's. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that reference you made before about waiting 2 months to let somebody know something broke. I mean, it's like and I think getting the daily huddles, though, sometimes getting people to do them the right way can be hard. I mean, I think people want to, sometimes they like to go along and just babble on. And
well, there's a way to do it, and I always, people always go, we don't have time to do it. I go, wait a minute. Ritz-Carlton, Microsoft, Apple, every hospital in the country does it between shifts. Thank God, if you're in the hospital, right? And, they find time to do it. Why? And the whole company doesn't get together. You have to, I always like to say either cascade down or cascade up, but start at the top with the leadership team. Like you said, small group. It doesn't have to be all firm or company, if you will. And then after you get done with that, cascade to your direct reports and so forth, no matter what size of company. And again, it's purpose and intent. If people come prepared for those meetings, they're more powerful, and keep it simple. Do not get into solutions for stucks or challenges. Say, let's take that offline. Let's work on it in the weekly meeting and take an action, but don't try to solve it. And that's where people go wrong. People start talking about their weekends and everything else. And, they're long-winded. People who are more detailed tend to want to tell a story. People who are more direct or more built for the huddle. Well, you have to get over that, and you have to make it very specific, no vagaries, and this is how we're going to run it. And if somebody starts going too far with something, look, Chuck, appreciate your insights, but this is a fast-paced meeting. We need you to get to the point a little quicker. And course correct it, do it offline. And because you have different personalities, Ken. But it's a high energy, fast paced, stand up if you're face to face. If it's on Zoom, I have a lot of companies that demand you're standing up on Zoom. Of course, you don't want to do that in an airplane or a car, but but you should be in a place where you can talk, if you will. And we have a lot of remote companies been doing this for years, way before COVID, and it's high energy, full engagement. If somebody's distracted, even on Zoom, you can see them looking at their phone, or doing something other than what they should be. And as a leader, you got to make sure their game is on. Like I said, it's game time. You would see an NFL team in a huddle, sitting there talking and, well, let's see, let's debate the play. No, they're all boom. They want to get to the line fast to get ready for the play. And if they do take too much time, what do? They burn a timeout, which kills a football team in the game. Same thing with a company and a firm.
You said something a while ago that's it's so simple, but so powerful was that who, what, when. I mean, if you can get that on everything, then you're going to execute.
Exactly. And the one W I add with intent, what I found over the years is put the why. Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
On any goal, why? Because if you don't know the why, right, then what? First of all, why are you doing it? And if someone else doesn't know the why, they don't execute as well as they do. Because if they know this project has to get done because it's going to impact this in our business or a client, for example, then they're going to be more prone to get after the what and the when part of it. So I always like to add the why in there because there's research out there that proves that if someone knows why and they have good intent, they're probably going to do a much better job at it. And they should know why, because some people think, oh, they're asking me why they're challenging my leadership. It has nothing to do with that. It's really about making sure people get it. And most people with good intent are going to execute that.
Yeah, it's like, and I still remember this from, 40 years ago. It was one of my law school professors says, if you understand the reason behind the rule or the law, then you can do a lot better job of arguing it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Oh,
yeah. And, why? I mean, that's the same deal. Why?
Yeah.
Why? And I always thought when I'm getting things together, like at our quarterly meetings, I kind of run an open forum. I mean, this is the problem. Now, this is what I think we want to do. But listen, tell me if you got a better, because you might have a better. But the deal is, I want them to understand that this is why we're doing this. I want to get buy-in. I think you got to get buy-in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. One of my coaches years ago, Ken, said, Chuck, you've got to teach the context before you teach the content. And I was like, what? And that's exactly it, though, the why, how it works, the contextual part of it. And we tend, as human beings, we do what? We just go do it, right? And after a while, we're like, I don't even know why I'm doing it. I mean, I've said that, I'm sure you have too, but so be able to teach the why in the context of the whatever you're working on, the project goal, whatever it is. And man, it connects dots. You can see, I see the lights go on whenever a client does that with their team. And spirited debate is fine, but at the end of the day, we have to get things done, and that's execution, if you will.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I'm going to switch gears a little bit because I talked to you about this a little bit before we got started today.
Yeah.
This, I've heard Vern Harnish say it. I've heard you say it. The biggest answers, having answers is the easy part. The hard part is asking the right question.
Yes.
So my question to you is, how do you know how to ask the right question? And it seems like that's harder than the answer.
Well, again, years ago, my coach said to me, when to ask the right question when you don't want to ask it. In other words, it's in your head. And you're like, oh my God, if I bring this up, it'll destroy the meeting, or nobody wants to deal with this now. That hard question, Jim Collins calls it the brutal, honest facts, so you're calling things out. So there's something and you see something, instead of just ignoring it, ask the question. How come? How could we do it? Think of the possibility. I love it in every industry. I don't care what industry it is. And we got them in law. You know them better than I do, right? There's myths of we don't do that as a law firm, or we don't do that in our profession. Those are called constraints. They're called myths for a reason. And if you can ask a question into that. Why not? How could we? That's a game changer, So most people are thinking about what's wrong. Sometimes they have a fear of bringing it up because it'll derail something or it'll upset people. But God's honest truth, if the building's burning down, don't sit there smelling and smoking. Ask the question, hey, do we need to get out of here? And the funny thing in business is it's the question. Even Einstein said that. He was famous for asking questions. And Michael Dell at Dell, he'd be in a meeting, right? And I had somebody work there tell me this. He would just ask a killer question and get everybody thinking differently, right? And you don't do it to just, create a problem. You're trying to create a solution, right? So think about this, Ken. Remember when you were young. How many times did you ask your parents questions and they say, go see your mother? No, go see your father, because you were curious, right? And of course, it depends on the question. But, think about kids. They're curious. Hey, daddy, mommy, why? Right? They do that when 4, 5, 6, 7, they get to be teenagers. We call them something else, right? For asking us questions. Why? But the point is curiosity. And human beings we're like sometimes just want to follow things and just stay in a comfort zone. Questions take you out of it and then they take you to solutions. And we think about it, scaling up, we got answers, right? Anytime you and I may have a question, you'll say, hey, how about this? How about that? We can brainstorm. We got the answers. They're out there. It's the question.
Yeah. And if you didn't have that, you wouldn't have stuff like drive-through banking and grocery carts and things like, that's why people, it's like when this happened and everybody said, you can't do that, Kim. I put a 30-day guarantee, client service satisfaction guarantee. They could go get their file for the first 30 days. And they said, all the lawyers said, Ken, you're crazy. You can't do that. I said, why can't I?
Yeah.
And I did. And
there you go.
Yeah. And it was a game changer. My 23% growth with no extra money in marketing just by that. So you never know till you try, do you?
Well, think about some of the transformation companies that appear to just show up overnight. Obviously, there's a lot more work than that, as we know in a scale up, but Airbnb, the hotel industry, no, we got it all, right? We're just going to put on certain sites. Nope. They thought differently. And then you get Uber and Lyft, right? Taking an industry that was built with constraints and barriers. You either had to know somebody or have a couple of $1 million to get a medallion. And they transformed that by asking, well, how could we? So that's to me like the Disney approach. Walt was genius, right? Look what he created. People say he was nuts. He was crazy, but he asked questions, he dreamed, and then he went after it. And that's what scaling up or greatness or excellence really is all about, is exactly that. And, we have to do that as coaches. The second we hit a wall as a coach, we have to ask ourselves, hey, man, what do I have to do to improve myself and my clients? There is no option, right? And when I hear companies that ask the right questions, I love it, because they're like, well, it's a myth or this or that. And I go, well, why? And then they can't answer me. And I go, what if you actually overcame that? Like you said, it is a game changer. So asking questions, better questions, stronger questions versus telling or what is the word? Always getting on the pulpit and saying, I know the answer. That's the key to scaling up and execution. Ask the right questions and enable people to do it, as opposed to don't ask that question. You can't challenge my authority, that kind of thinking. That kills questions.
And I think poor leadership is when you don't, it's when I see leaders or business owners, law firm owners, and they just kill the messenger. They just, if it's not their ideal, you ever seen a person when if it's not their ideal, it's not going to work. And I think if you're going to scale any kind of business, law firm, anything, you've got to be open. I've always thought that the people down on the front line, I always felt like myself as a general sitting on the hill like Patton, but really, and I can do all the strategy I want to, but them people down in the trenches up front really know what the hell's going on.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Jack Stack, who wrote The Great Game of Business and flipped the company that was losing like 650 million to making 650 million. Talk about a scale back, I guess we scale back and up. type of approach. But Jack would go out and connect with his people on the floor in the manufacturing machining company that he was involved with, and the answers were there. Some of those people actually became entrepreneurs and were running some of Jack's companies. He's created, I don't know, 40, 50 different companies over the years, but it's right. The answers are there if you're open to it. And the other thing too that really strikes me is do more listening and be more silent as a leader. It's a good thing because some of us just naturally like to talk or be engaged in the process. Sometimes just asking a question and then just listening. Listen to your team. Let them speak before you ask a question and give them the answer. I see that all the time with leaders. What do you think we should do? Then 2 seconds later, here's what I think we should do. That doesn't create, an organization of execution, and it doesn't bring out what you said, the best in their people.
Okay. Well, listen, we're getting towards the end, but I want to ask you this, because I know, looking back at your books, looking at my books, tell me, what's the best 1 or 2 books you've read in the last 2 or 3 months?
The one that stands out for me by far is it's called BE 2.0 from Jim Collins. It's Beyond Entrepreneurship. Jim wrote that book before he wrote the Good to Great series. I have copies of it. I've read it, and in 1920, as he went through the 1900s and wrote the Good to Great series, that was the first book, the precursor to the Good to Great series that he wrote, which you've got a couple of books up on your shelf. And so BE 2.0 is really a revision, because some people call it a revision, update a paragraph here and there. Jim really sunk his teeth into it. It was written last year during COVID, so it's relevant. And he added a lot of insights for smaller and medium-sized businesses, because Good to Great, classically, you see all these big companies think it's all corporate. It's really not. But he tied a lot together, Ken. And I've got the Audible, the book. I've gone through it at least once read, once listened to. I'm going through it again, and I saw him live recently, which really complimented that. But it's genius. It gets after leadership, people, strategy, and ties all of his best practices together. By and large, that is absolutely the book that I've been focused on the last month or so and diving into. And it's a treasure trove of insight, wisdom that's current, and it ties things together, and Jim was on fire when he recorded it and when he did his workshop I went to a couple of weeks ago. Just amazing. So that's the big one for me right now. And there'll be some cool books coming out on leadership. Pat Lencioni's got a book coming out later this year on the working geniuses. What kind of smarts and talents do you have to really drive a team, and then an assessment that goes with it. And there's a lot more on the horizon, and scaling up. That's what all we do is eat and breathe books, right? And I sent you a bunch of them on sales just a little while ago before our session on sales process. So there's some great books there too. So those are mine. How about you? What are you reading?
Oh, well, let's see. I read this Built to Sell by John Murray. What's his name?
Warlow.
Yeah.
He's awesome.
Got through with that one. And I just ordered some more books this morning that I saw that I wanted to read. But I'm going to put this one, BE
2.0. Yep. So it's a real revision of his first original book. The gentleman that wrote it with him, Bill Lazor, was his mentor from Stanford. And he wrote it in his honor because he passed. And it was one of those guys that changed his life because he asked him a question. And Jim formulated, talk about questions, Jim formulated, his Good to Great series on how do you build enduringly great companies. And that whole series hatched from that. So talk about asking great questions. That was the premise. And he continues to work on that to this date, which is just amazing. It blows me away.
Well, listen, if somebody wants to get up with you, I know your company's called a Transformation Company, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
But if they want to follow up or get up with you, best way.
If anybody wants to chat, happy to. They can go to our site. We've got a little assessment. They can schedule right on the site, and or they can reach me directly at chuck@thetransformation.company. And they can also call us and call Tracy, my executive admin, who's super. She'll get you set up. And that number is 719-487-1899.
Well, listen, I really appreciate it. And I want to have you back because we just talked about execution today. There's 3 more things to talk about.
Yeah, man. There's a lot more to talk about. I enjoyed it, Ken. I enjoy working and collaborating with you. And it's an honor. And thanks for the opportunity to share some things with your listenership.
All right. Thank you, Chuck. And until next time, this is Ken Hardison, dedicated to your success.
You have been listening to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, the podcast that leads lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Go to growyourlawfirm.com to find more ways to market and manage your law firm. Please leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts.